Hi BookTube, and welcome to a video which is going to be an original tag. This is the Have You Ever tag, which is 22 questions, not related to books but related to you, the booktuber, and they're sort of pushing at the boundaries of certain activities you may or may not have ever undertaken in your life. Don't worry if the answer is no, you haven't, because as I say, there's 22 questions, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of these that you have done. So on with the tag. 1. Have you ever seen a vulture? Well, I have actually, as I've mentioned in one of my other tags, which I can't remember which one it is now. I saw one in a zoo, and it was sort of stood on the ground level behind the wire fence, and so I sort of had a staring match with it and lost, because that's what vultures do, is because they don't hunt, they only scavenge. They're particularly attuned to staring at things, tracing for any movement, because if anything moves it's still alive, so they have to be absolutely sure that it's completely still and therefore dead. And I blinked, I had to look away. I mean, I stared in those eyes and there's nothing, it's just absolute depths of black void. And I was sort of so struck by this that I've written several stories about vultures. Okay, question 2. Have you ever had a portrait painted? Well, I've never had one painted, but I've had a family portrait with my wife and twins done in photography. And that was a hellish day, because neither me or my oldest twin, I think they were about 3 or 4, maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Neither of us wanted to be there. I don't like being photographed. I'm with those primitives who feel that it steals one's soul to have one's photo taken. I don't have a camera phone. I don't do selfies, I don't do anything like that. But anyway, well, I was the adult, so I couldn't really play up. But fortunately, my oldest son, he did play up and really sort of did everything in his power not to be photographed. And it was a very, very long, painful session. So inside I was cheering him on, but on the outside I was sort of, trying to get him to play ball. Question 3, have you ever served on a jury? Again, I have once in my life. It was a time when I was homeless and I was sort of sleeping on friends' sofas and moving around London. And when you do jury service, you're entitled to expenses, travel expenses and things like that. And I didn't have a fixed abode, so I had to keep filling out a new form virtually every day with a new address. So I looked more shifty than the people who were on trial. But I had two cases. We found both cases not guilty. For reasons that we didn't basically believe the police evidence. Draw what conclusions from that you will. The first one was a drugs bust where the undercover officer could not appear in court, which I understand. I don't have a problem with that. But it struck me that makes it very hard to sort of prove your case if the main sort of detective who's got personal evidence because he's been sort of conducting deals undercover or whatever is not there. And the second one was a very odd case. It was some stolen electronic weighing scales which had turned up in the window of a halal butcher's, and it wasn't the police who originally sort of charged the guy. It was the owner of the factory where the scales had been stolen from. He'd spotted them in this shop. And he wanted the police to investigate, and they did, and the butcher was hauled up in front of us, and we decided that how the hell was he supposed to know it was stolen? I mean, he shouldn't be buying second-hand stuff, but we all do it. This is years before the internet and eBay and all of that, I hasten to add. So we found him not guilty. And I have to say, as an experience, for me, it reaffirmed my trust in my fellow man, because everyone took their duties really, really seriously and gave it, due moral weight as to the issues. And in the first case, in the British justice system, the jurors are allowed to ask questions by writing them down and handing them to the usher to pass to the judge, and the judge will ask them. And me and this other guy kept we kept doing these questions because we just felt both the prosecuting and the defending QCs were not doing their job properly. They were key questions for us. In the end, the judge said maybe if the jury can keep all their questions to the end. So yeah, I mean, it was an extraordinary experience, and I'd quite like to do it again, really. Question 4. Have you had a fortune or a tarot reading? I can't honestly remember that I have, so I think my answer is no, but my wife has. And she claims it basically told her that she was going to meet someone who turned out to be me. So make of that what you will. 5. Ever won a trophy? Yes, I've won various low-level football trophies, but I suppose my proudest one was when I was managing my kids' football team, and we were in a league. It's called the Watford Friendly League. I think it was about the under-8s or under-9s, and our team was voted the most fair play team of every under-9 team in that league, which I was quite proud of, really. Question 6. Have you ever visited a historical battlefield? Again, not to my knowledge, certainly not consciously. When we did a tour of America when I was about 14 with my parents, we may have gone and visited a battlefield, but I really can't remember now. So I'm going to say no for that. Question 7. Have you ever climbed a mountain, either part or all of it? Well, it's a bit of a cheat in that when we went to Pompeii, they drove us up Vesuvius, the volcano that exploded for Pompeii. And then we walked up part of it, having driven most of the way up. But it was, first of all, it's a volcano. Is that technically a mountain? I don't know. But it was an extraordinary experience because we were at such a height where these sort of really thin clouds, wisps of cloud, were sort of, bisecting your body and stuff. And that was a sort of strange sensation, to be up in the clouds, or that level of cloud. And also just the sort of sheer black of the sort of hardened lava, magma, whatever, of Vesuvius that is what you're walking on. So it was, it was quite an affecting experience. But I can't really say I've climbed it. Question 8. Have you ever acted in a film or a play? Well, yes, I've done it a few times. When I was at college, I was writing plays. And the first one I ever wrote was sort of set in the world of sort of football hooliganism, and we performed it behind a fence and everything. And the nature of the thing was, obviously there's quite a lot of swearing in it, in the sort of chants directed at the rival fans, who, the way I'd written it is, the rival fans were the audience. But I couldn't get anyone to act in it because of the language, apparently. So I thought, oh, well, how can I expect other people to do this if I won't go and do it? So I stepped up and I took on the main role in my own play, which had never been my intention. I didn't write in order to act. And I had to learn to smoke for the role because I didn't smoke then and I don't smoke now. But for 2 weeks, one in rehearsal, one in performance, I was smoking 3 cigarettes a day, something like that. And at the after-show party, when we'd finished the run, I found myself asking for a cigarette. I thought, wait a minute, it's taken 2 weeks to get addicted. So I managed to knock it on the head. But yes, so I have acted in a play. And method acting, I learned how to smoke. Question 9. Have you tried alternative health treatments? I've tried many alternative health treatments for my insomnia, basically. So I've tried acupuncture. I've tried kinesiology, reflexology, aromatherapy. I've probably tried some others, but anyway, I whenever I see these things in the medical press attacking alternative health, I get very irate. I know it's the sort of similar relationship of religion and science to the medical practitioners, but I don't believe you can rule out it's not for everyone, and if people want to try it, then let them try it. It is a sort of a faith healing sort of equivalence, really. And I would say that kinesiology, I think, has definitely had a really sort of helpful effect. It hasn't cured me of insomnia, but as a sort of all over body treatment and mind as well, I think it has made a difference in my life. It's really hard to quantify or prove that, and I accept that. Maybe it's my but why am I saying kinesiology has helped, but acupuncture and reflexology less so? What's my agenda there? I don't have one. The only one I didn't get on with was aromatherapy, and I only ever had one session of that, where basically they cover you in all these aromatic oils, and it's supposed to purge the toxins, and they leave you on the sort of massage table for these oils to do their work. And I think there was some sort of healing music on, and I just had this. I got very paranoid. It was almost as if the toxins were bleeding out of me and making having this effect on me. And I thought my body was made of glass and it was going to shatter and all the liquids were going to come out. It's a very, very strange, unsettling experience. So I've only ever had that done once. I have written about it. Question 10. Have you ever left a restaurant bill unpaid, either by doing a flit or in a protest at the poor food or service? I haven't, for the simple reason that my father used to kick up a fuss at restaurants. He was a real foodie, a gourmand, or gastronome, whatever the word is. And if ever the food was not up to scratch or the service was not up to scratch, he would make a scene. And me and my mother would just sort of quail and sort of sink into the table. So because of that, I cannot do it, no matter how... I mean, I don't eat out very often anyway, but if I do and it's not very good, I won't make a scene, just because I've been scarred by my father in doing exactly that. Question 11. Have you ever had a face-to-face meeting with your elected political representative? Well, I have. I used to live in Kilburn, which is a sort of, then, I mean, there is no sort of ghetto area of London anymore because of property prices, but then it was a bit of sort of ghetto area of sort of, what was the Hampstead and Highgate ward? Hampstead and Highgate being two of the most expensive property areas outside of central London. The MP was the marvellous Glenda Jackson, who was, of course, the very famous film actress. But she thought that films were sort of too trivial and wanted to be, serious, high-minded person. So she got elected as the MP for this area. And was probably the only person who could have won that area for the Labour Party, which is the left in the UK, because of her association with acting and literature. All the people, all the literati who live in Hampstead Highgate voted for her, and she got in. But I went to see her about an issue with our house where we this policy that the Conservatives had introduced of selling off local council-owned housing, that the people who'd lived there a certain amount of time had the right to buy it. And we bought it off the flat off someone who'd done it. Basically, they'd been a tenant, they bought the flat and then flipped it very quickly, and they made it cool because these properties were so heavily discounted in order to make the scheme work for political reasons. So that person made a cool profit overnight by selling it to us. But what we never received notification of, that the council was still contracted to do some external work on scaffolding and stuff, which we had no idea of. So I went to see Glenda Jackson MP about this, saying, well, how can we be charged for it when we knew nothing about it? And she worked really, really hard on our case and won it for us, which is brilliant. And she sent me a Christmas card as well, which is very nice. Question 12. Have you ever mastered a musical instrument? Well, sadly, no, I haven't. I would love to have mastered the bass guitar and bought one when I was at university, but I'm tone deaf and basically dyspraxic, so I couldn't. But in the when I was 11 at school, everybody had to opt for a musical instrument, and I chose the cello. I'm not sure why. And they made you take it home and practice at home. You didn't have to bring it back to school each week for the lessons, because obviously they had other cellos. But and I was completely hopeless at the cello. And I remember when I finally brought it back at the end of the year, I brought it back in two pieces because on the journey there the bridge had snapped off it, and I just sort of handed it back, and that sort of seemed to sum up my relationship with musical instruments, classical music, and the whole school music department, which I hated. I was a really devoted scholar at school. I worked really, really hard, but I kept falling foul of the music department because I was into punk and all this sort of stuff. And of course, they wouldn't abide anything past about 1900. Question 13. Have you ever fired a gun? I have. Again, at school, in the sixth form, we had this option called Arms and Armaments, where we visited a gun shop and learned about the law. We fired archery, bows and arrows, but I also got to fire a shotgun and a Lee Enfield .303 rifle, which is the staple rifle of the British Army in the Second World War. And the Lee Enfield was targets on a firing range that the school had, because it had a military cadet corps, which I did not join, I hasten to add. And I hit the target, I suppose, about 6-7 times out of 10, never hit a bullseye. But the shotgun, basically, they took some litter bins and inverted them and then just put sort of tin cans on them. And we shot at them, and I never hit one because I don't know if it was the recoil or whatever, but just kept pulling the gun down, and all my buckshot sort of fell short of the target. And I just remember the sort of the ache in the shoulder the day after because of the recoil. So that's my experience of firing guns. Not a terribly glorious one. Question 14. Have you ever taken an overnight sleeper train? I have, in 2 different countries. The first was in what was then Yugoslavia before it split up into 6 countries, where for some reason most of the trains only seem to run at night on their network. That plus the fact that half of the youth hostels that we booked, sort of the bookings turned out not to have been made. So I think we were in Yugoslavia for about a week, and basically we travelled at night and tried to sleep on the trains because we didn't have youth hostels waiting for us at the other end. And we kept going backwards and forwards between Zagreb and Belgrade on the way to other places. But you couldn't really sleep because everyone in Yugoslavia at that time travelled at night, so it was very noisy. The sound of a train hurtling through the night is noisy. The border guards would come and demand your documents because we were Westerners all the time. So it was just, it was a disaster. And the other was, we went up to Aviemore in northern Scotland where there's a skiing resort, my family and another family. And on the way back we got the sleeper train, which again one didn't really sleep because of the same reasons. But all I remember of that skiing trip is I'm not interested in skiing, so I didn't do it. I just spent most of my time on the Space Invaders machine in the resort. That's how I chip into the family spirit. Question 15. Have you patented or copyrighted anything? Well, I have, because I'm an author, so I've copyrighted lots and lots of stuff. Nothing terribly interesting. I haven't invented anything, so I haven't patented anything. Although I understand that patents are really, really expensive and discourage you from doing it. Question 16. Have you accidentally taken home somebody else's bag or coat or anything like that? Well, I haven't, but I do have a very good story passed down in family law where my late grandfather, who ran a chain of fish and chip shops in London, he went straight from work to meet his wife at the theatre. They were going to see some show. And he always brought home fresh fish for her to cook. And, he had it in his briefcase that he, used as a businessman. And checked it in at the cloakroom. And when he got home, he opened his briefcase and sort of throwing out all these papers going, "Where's my fish? Who's got my fish?" Because it had been switched by accident at the cloakroom. And as my grandmother told the story, just imagine the other guy when he gets home and he sort of pulls out this sort of uncooked fish, believing, to have all these papers. It's a marvellous story and a brilliant image, but not me personally. Question 17. Have you ever talked a stranger down from a troubling situation? Well, I have. I'm not a great. I don't fly anymore at all. But I was never a great flyer. But I had an American girlfriend who'd gone back for her last year at Brown University, and I went to visit her. Stayed with her for 3 weeks, and on the return journey, there was a woman behind me who was an even worse flyer than I was, and it was beginning to sort of affect me. So I just turned around and started talking to her and sort of trying to calm her down, and we compared notes and stuff. And sort of got through the flight mutually that way. And in talking to her, I discovered that she was coming to stay with a friend in London, but the friend would be at work by the time the plane arrived. So I said she'd come and hang out at the place that I was staying at, which is my father's flat in central London. And now that strikes me as a very odd thing, both for me to do and for her to accept, because we were strangers to each other. And she ended up staying for about 6 hours at my father's flat, and we just sort of continued talking. That's all that happened. But I didn't know her. She, I'd sort of invited her into my father's flat, and she didn't know me. Anyway, that was that. Question 18. Have you ever stood for election, no matter on what scale? I have at university. The university I went to, you couldn't really live out in the town except in some really bad university-owned housing. And I didn't really want to do that. In my middle year, my second year, I came basically bottom of the housing sort of lottery, as did one of my best mates. And the only way we could get anything that was at all habitable was if we shared, because there are about 9 shared suites on the university campus itself. So we shared in the second year and had a really good time. We wanted to share again in the third year, but we also wanted to play the system. We wanted to boost our chance in the lottery. So he stood as the treasurer of the student union, college student union, and I stood as the sports secretary. Because if you were a student union official, you went up, you got priority sort of housing. And we both won our elections, but probably because no one stood against us or it's one of those apathetic things. Neither of us had to do terribly much in our roles. But it worked, and we came second on the joint ballot of these 9 rooms. We got these beautiful wood-panelled, 16th century, 17th century rooms, and had a fantastic third year. I mean, basically, we became the social hub of our circle because of the great rooms that we had to offer. So I won that election. Question 19: have you ever tried to fly a kite? Well, I don't know if I did as a child, but when I had children of my own, somebody bought 2 kites for my twins, so we attempted to fly them without any success whatsoever. Question 20: have you ever had a letter or an article published in a newspaper? I've had a letter on theatre, and just what a sorry parlour state it's in the UK, because it's just there's nothing new. This is probably about 5-6 years ago. Maybe longer actually, and I got it published in a broadsheet. I can't remember, was it the Guardian or the Telegraph, and I cited Samuel Beckett, but I can't remember much about it. I probably got it knocking about somewhere, but that's I don't believe many people probably still do that in an internet age, because you just go online. You can go onto the Guardian, which is one of our sort of broadsheet newspapers, and go on to Comment Is Free and all of that. Question 21. Have you ever bought something at an auction, but not an online auction, an actual auction, gone in and bid for something? I don't think I have, no. And question 22, have you ever delivered a speech? I've delivered several speeches. I find speech making quite easy. If you write it. I am a writer, so I find that reasonably straightforward. But it's just a question of learning it. Whether you're delivering it with the thing in front of you or from memory. So I gave the eulogy at my father's burial. That was unscripted. I mean, I'd gone over the ideas in my mind, but I never wrote it down. I never typed it out. But that's not really the speech I want to talk about. The speech I want to talk about was at my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, silver wedding anniversary, where my father threw a party for 300 people to celebrate their silver wedding anniversary. And as the only child, I gave the speech extolling a wonderful achievement, fantastic marriage. And 2 weeks later, my father left my mother. And it turned out that the party was a thank you and goodbye kiss off to her. But he never told me or anyone, so I was absolutely furious with him, having given this speech and made to look, a right fool. And I don't think they gave the presents back either. So there you have it. There's the 22 questions on Have You Ever? And I'm going to tag a lot of people who are, with one exception, from outside the UK, because I'm quite interested to see the cultural differences in some of these questions. For example, fired a gun is going to have a lot different response, I think, in America than it is here. And so, I'm interested to know about, how it works with your local elected representatives and what access you have to them. So the people I'm tagging are Silje in Norway, Todd the Librarian in the southern states of America. Is it Kentucky or Tennessee, Todd? You'll have to tell me. The Bald Book Geek, who's the one UK-based guy I'm tagging this. Leah, Laura Frey, Johnny Keane, and Michael at Catalyst Reads. So over to you guys if you feel like taking the Have You Ever tag. And thanks very much. Till next time.